me make sure.
Under your seat.
Let me make sure I got headroom here. Hang on.
Jumping up, you want to do it while you're...
Max, just make sure I got some. I don't cut off the top of my.
No, we don't want just your jowls.
Although it might work out. Wow. I'm afraid you've all been misinformed.
Thank you for dressing up for us.
This is a poetry reading for anyone who's in the wrong place. This would be, you can just exit there, stage left. Okay, well, Nancy, here we are again.
Yes.
Thank you, David. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for this wonderful venue, and thank you all for turning up on a Sunday afternoon. I know the free wine didn't help. So, Marianne Moore, in probably her most famous poem, the first line she says is, "I too dislike it." The title of the poem is poetry. "I too dislike it," she said. So I took a cue from Marianne. This is called Poetry Reading. I too dislike slim volume murmurings. In listening, disquieting comparisons arise. Posts on social media, a classroom recitation. An active septuagenarian shares a love of gardening. In overgrown poems no pruning could save. An English teacher borrows Wallace Stevens tropes and returns them to us, decidedly worse for wear. Like jeans with a ripped seat, all the rage with kids these days, but comical on a poet his age. Of what use daffodils, blackbird perspectives, faced with real world urgency? Poems do nothing, as the poet says. But that holds true of verse read in silence too. Its navel-gazing vexes me, as do swarms of contests, whose judges sting like wasps, and one-horse town laureates, who rub me wrong as a too-tight harness, along with performances in need of reining in. But worst of all is my complicity. I confess to hypocrisy in trying to forge art from confusion, fishing for applause from a few half-filled folding seats, mostly filled, awaiting turns. Keep it to 5 minutes, please. O muse, goddess of my guttering flame, pity this lame invention offered in your name. As I rise to read, please make them pay attention. Let them applaud the facile rhymes I jangle in my too brief time. So, Moore goes on, in that poem, Moore goes on to say, there are things more important beyond all this fiddle. And in my moments of doubt, I have to agree. But I also think of the great poet Ezra Pound, who said, only emotion endures. When I first read that, I was startled. Emotion? Isn't that the most fleeting thing in the world? But after I thought about it a while, he meant poetry, art, music. Those come from our emotions, and those are the things that endure. As a side note, Pound was a great poet, but I wouldn't want my sister to marry him. So, following Marianne Moore, speaking of fiddle, I grew up watching these guys after school and on Saturday mornings, and looking back, that might help explain some of my dysfunction. There's a vocabulary note in here, apotheosis. Apotheosis means elevated to a godhead, that a mortal is elevated to a god. The Roman emperors were apotheosized. Stooges' apotheosis. Devoid of Keaton's martyr's soul and Chaplin's saintly grace, destruction was their holy role, and bedlam sacred space. In overalls or cummerbund, no matter what the trappings, they were divine impostors from the bungled heart of things. A universe where brutal slapstick chaos calls the tune, and laughter is the thunderclap of the gods applauding ruin. So Franz Kafka said, the meaning of life is it ends. So this next one grew out of a conversation I had with myself at 3 a.m. in the dark. Colloquy with death. I was chatting with death the other day, shooting the breeze in a whatever happened to what's his name conversation, when, out of nowhere, he startled me with a confession. Bursting into tears, he wailed, he feels worthless, racked by self-loathing. I was taken aback. I didn't think we were close enough for that kind of sharing. Awkward. Ever agile, I played the puffer. You are the tortilla, I said, of the whole enchilada. The arrow shot through love's heart. But I don't think he bought my bonami. As my proffered garlands wilted, seized by unease, I broke things off with a wave, a crack and a smile, all the best, etc., and walked briskly away, feeling hollow eyes following me, wondering what in the world to do with this frightening new intimacy. So I share my background with the Garden family. Nancy and David Sr. lived in Pittsburgh, PA for quite a while, as I recall. Pittsburgh was named after William Pitt, the Elder, 1st Earl of Chatham. When it was captured from the French, it was Fort Duquesne. It was named Fort Pitt. It was General Forbes, the British general, who captured it, probably pronounced it Pittsburgh, like Edinburgh, because you notice the spelling is the same with the GH on the end. During early on in its history, an early travel writer described Pittsburgh as hell with a lid off. Reflux castaways from Garden Shore to Golden Coast, stack-spewed offspring in exile, recall your infernal glory, Steel City. In their pick and shovel, back and bicep dreams, dark barges plow Monongahela mud, freighted with visions, locomotives, skyscrapers, battleships, downriver to the confluence of immigrant forebears, forging the future from raw earth. They remember your fork-banked cathedrals of canonical tomes, Cretaceous bones, and Giverny oils, stamped with the Scotsman's Midas moniker, King Coke's adamantine aesthetic, Thonic fathers who worshipped learning, and old masters with the same ruthless reverence they prostrated before capital. Gone those men of steel, Carnegie, the weaver's immigrant son, whose bootstrap ambition preached a gospel of wealth. Frick, the aesthete warrior who, bleeding from an anarchist's assault, sat penning terms of a loan while his wounds were stitched, as impervious to bullet and blade as to the rancor of rank and file, who at the end of the story goes, refused the chairman's olive branch with the same still will, declaiming they would meet again in hell, where, according to at least one visitor, their luxuriance began. Pittsburgh was not all satanic mills and dark rotten eggs smell. This poem grew out of some happy memories. As a kid, when I was a kid, very few baseball games were televised. There was only a handful. And my grandfather, whom we all called Pops, was a great baseball fan. So on summer nights, we would sit on the front porch. He would set the radio up in the window, and we'd sit on the front porch listening to the Pittsburgh Pirates game. In this poem, I use some baseball jargon. The word fungo refers to a type of fielding practice The coach uses a light bat called a fungo bat to hit ground balls to fielders. This is called baseball on the radio. Long before desire benched the boy I was and took the field. We escaped baking in our old brick oven those summer nights when Pops ran a cord to the porch window so we could sit listening to katydid shrieks, compete with buzzing ballpark fans peppered by vendors hawking cold beer and peanuts as fireflies signaled heater, deuce. The zenith glowed like the tip of Pop's cigar as the commentator fungoed lapidary stats between plug of chew yarns, green as the outfield. Like the one about Casey Stengel, booed at the plate in Brooklyn, Casey doffed his cap, releasing a bird that flew over the stunned, silent crowd. Or the time he thought it too dark to play and signaled the bullpen with a lantern. Those spells kept us wrapped in the wind-up, the pitch, the crack of horsehide on ash, the majestic arc, pictured in the words of a waking dream. Poetry flying like Casey's dove, timeless as a summer night, on waves of amplitude, out to diamond stars, modulated memories crackling with static, fading in and out. Another Pittsburgh native was Andy Warhol. Andy was a poster child for poor self-image. Very true. His given name was Warhola. His family name was Warhola. And when one of his employers mistakenly dropped the A in a typo, he just shrugged it off and, oh, okay, I guess that's my new name. Went along with it. He also, during at the start of his fame, he also sent an actor imposter around as himself to do lectures around the country. And of course, in those days before, you couldn't just Google somebody and have an image come up. It took quite a while for people to catch on. He sent an actor around in silver hair. And then when asked, he was asked where he was from, and he said, I am from nowhere. So this is Ode on Andy Nowhere. Sphinx, without a riddle, as like to vanish after the Vitus dance years with millhunkies in the Berg, or lustering Bonwit windows on Mad Ave, as storming bastions of fine art, leading our charging hordes of commerce. You figured wholesale knockoffs would do, framed by themselves like mirrored mirrors, and we agreed, entranced by dollar bills floating in fluorescence like water lilies, our own deeply superficial adoration of screen icons and genuine fake originals like you. Art was just another label you pirated, Figment. Especially once a woe manifesto drilled a hole in the half of you there, coloring ever after. You pictured immortality hidden in plain sight on a supermarket shelf, and we bought it. I once heard an art critic say, he was referencing the famous Warhol soup cans. He said, art, people can have a whole variety, a whole spectrum of responses to art. They're all legitimate. And one of those responses can be, this is bullshit. I've made 2 trips to Ireland. The first time was with the late great John Kelly and our kith and kin. And during that trip, we took a ferry ride out to one of the Aran Islands, Inisheer, the closest one. And the sea it was a beautiful day. The whole time we were there, the people kept saying to us, oh, this isn't Irish weather, You're not experiencing the true Irish weather. Because it was gorgeous. And the sea was like glass that day. It was just, we didn't give it a thought. And then the next time we went back, I went back, it was quite different. But one of the places we visited on that first trip was a place called the Burren, an area out in West Ireland which is noted for its Paleolithic monument tombs called Stone Age tombs called dolmens, and they're quite. You have to wonder how in the world these people without any technology hoisted these tons and tons of rock. So this is called monumental. My son, with other tourist kids, perches atop the capstone of a dolmen, a Stone Age portal tomb, surveying the barren austerity of West Ireland's Burren, as I wonder how flesh and blood manhandled tons of limestone. My guidebooks notes ancient supposed giants erected these megalithic memorials. Since science exiled giants to fairy tales, parsing monumental mystery invites scientific fancy. Interstellar visitors of high intelligence intervening in our little lives, leaving weighty evidence of their presence for our edification. Is it more down to earth, averring bone-deep hunger for light, hoisted these humongous homages to slabs sanctified by blood, toil, tears? Can this unyielding place yield proof when, aided by a pint or two or no, whimsy still spies we green men born of lightning jigs, will-o'-the-wisps leading us on, despite our modern grounding? The guidebook tells us origins of these massive puzzles of will and muscle remain unknown. As our children laugh and climb for photos, bright mementos, like constellations, distant pinpoints of light, shining from the infinite darkness of which we remain so unenlightened. And then on the second trip to Ireland, I again made the ferry ride from Doolin out across Galway Bay to Inisheer. But this time, the sea was nowhere near as calm. And so they were handing out garbage bags. Fortunately, my companion and I managed to hold it together because nobody in our immediate vicinity lost it, so we made it there okay. But this is, and it's a fascinating island. There's an old crumbling fort, medieval fort on top of it. It's, sort of the land time forgot. And there's a church there with, it's in a pit actually, and it's surrounded by a graveyard. So the graveyard, if you can imagine, is on the sort of this ridge overlooking the church. And you go down into the pit, and of course the pit is filled up with sand by the wind all the time, and so they have to keep digging this out. The graveyard on Inisheer, rough ferry ride across South Sound beneath a mackerel sky. Some lightened of breakfast by the time tranquility disgorges squeezy cargo on Inisheer. Limestone, brine, dune grass, and sand, combed by low stone pile walls, capped by a crumbling stone fort. Celtic crosses with flotsam epitaphs ring St. Quavin's sunken church. Roofless granite walls in a pit where gravedigger shovels forever battle encroaching dunes. If you fit through the narrow window behind the altar slab, you squeeze into heaven, say the locals. I like it and I love it, the shopkeeper says, of his stone outcrop of sea churn and wind-bowed grass, ringed in aquamarine. Why not this afterlife? Accordion and ancient tongue, and a pint of porter pass a slow afternoon between tides. So, anybody see the Elvis movie? The new Elvis movie?
Yes.
Well, I haven't. So, but I'm grateful because it makes this poem a little more current. I wrote the original draft of this poem 30 years ago when, right after Elvis died, there were all these reported sightings of him. He's a construction worker, a garbage man. I saw Elvis. He's not dead. He's working out on Highway 29. 7-Eleven, right. So I started thinking, well, maybe this is some type of afterlife punishment, maybe like Hamlet's father. Elvis is condemned to walk the earth for a while, and of course this went to absurdity because at the end of it I decided that Satan was actually Henny Youngman. So.
Or vice versa.
Elvis in hell. Even on days he is condemned to shake off dusty death and rise anew to make another roadside cameo before a white line wired trucker eyeballing Peoria, or a spectral reflection in the window shopping reverie of a Tulsa widow. Even in those moments he's risen off the record. His soul remains imprisoned in a velvet painting in El Paso, a sequined t-shirt in a boardwalk casino, a Nashville plaster coin bank statuette. These haunts, new and old, render no release for a U.S. mail of the old stamp, from the net of impersonators, harpies of regret, drawling old songs that scald like bacon grease. Offer no freedom, sweet and redeeming, like in those golden olden hound dog days, on the flatbed stages of State Fair midways, girls in cotton dresses crying and screaming as soulful music just erupted from within. Gospel grace, raining fire down from heaven. No more. The ghost gigs, torture's dumb show, and Stygian nights flash neon agony, for he's not the hot act down below. The king is dead, no headliner he, in sold-out rooms on the infernal strip. Just a has-been warm-up for the big marquee, the grinning boss of Mephistopheles, who sets him howling with a quivering lip and a biting quip. Take my dignity, please.
So did you know he made a movie here? And they stayed,
Oh yes, yeah.
they stayed at the Ink House.
Well, that's right. What is the winery? Yes, Wild in the Country. Elvis,
Yeah.
Elvis filmed Wild in the
And
Country.
then I think they stayed at the Ink House because they have the posters up there.
Yeah, I visited the winery. I visited that winery, a little family winery, a few years back. So I need poetry juice here. So it's October, and it seems to be the month for nuclear anxiety. There was, we've got Putin rattling his missiles. We've got, back when I was just a kid, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. And there's another near miss that occurred during Richard Nixon's presidency that is not quite as well known, perhaps, as the Cuban Missile Crisis. Nixon was fond of something he called madman theory. Niccolo Machiavelli is famous for writing a 16th century realpolitik treatise called The Prince. And it basically says throw out morality and do whatever works to hold on to power. And one of the things he suggested was that it's sometimes good for a leader to pretend to be nuts, to scare your enemies into doing what you want. And so Nixon in October 1969 spread the word. He was anxious to get Ho Chi Minh to the peace table in Paris. And the North Vietnamese were being very intractable, and he decided that he was going to spread the word that he was losing it, and that he could do anything, including start a nuclear war. And so for 3 days he had nuclear bombers skirting Russian, Soviet borders. They were refueling in midair, very dangerous operation. I can only imagine what the men on board those planes were. They were up there for 72 hours, wondering whether they were going to have a home to come back to. Scary time. So this is called Mad Princes. In '69, unbeknownst to Congress and the public, Nixon adopted a pet stratagem, A secret ploy designed to get Ho to the peace table by feigning madness. The game was on. In Moscow, war was chess. Nixon favored poker's riskier bet unstable isotope, Russian roulette. Some might call it madness mocking madness. For 3 days, nuclear bombers skirted Soviet airspace, waiting for instruction. Pretense balanced on knife-edged reality, while unaware Americans flirted with their mutual assured destruction. A dirty trick worthy of Machiavelli. As for the men on board those hellbound planes, not knowing Nixon's ruse for saving face, awaiting word which cities to erase, what nerve or hope or angel kept them sane. His father's ghost propelled the antic dame. No spirit cried for vengeance in this case. A blunder or a breeze might leave no place to hide. What home or haven would remain? Italian princes fought medieval war with hand-to-hand combatants in the field, accomplishing their slaughters one-on-one and tallying the bodies by the score. Our mastery of Shiva's awful yield means deaths computed by the megaton. October is also noted as a dangerous time for another reason, as we're all very well aware of. Fire season, in the time when I fought fires, I was a seasonal firefighter 1 year for the Forest Service. And in those, almost 40 years, I guess it's been 40 years, the fire season has gotten just much more threatening. And we've realized some other problems are happening as well. Lots of extinctions are going on that we may be the cause of. This is called October Augury. Roused from sleep by buffeting winds, I shuffle in darkness to gaze out at Orion, locked in pursuit, ascended now on the eve of the hunter's moon, as Diablo winds gust from parched land, scattering withered gatherings with summer's last scorching gasp, threatening fire before succumbing to winter's bludgeon. Already my dream, an old woman outside my door, sweeping dead leaves and laughing, skitters away, elusive as an autumn hare, where the wind's almost intelligible clamor. Can the hunter see the seasons shifting in unfamiliar ways? Will he quit the game? The news today proclaimed 3 billion birds vanished from the skies, sparrows, blackbirds, warblers, and more, since I was a young man, a span laughably short, set against the migrations of Betelgeuse and Rigel. Despite stark witness, we remain steadfast in past imaginings, starry-eyed abandon, deaf and dumb to all discourse that might call those passerine spirits back. The street lamp casts long shadows of writhing branches on the wall, transmuted by despair into supplicants, beseeching forbearance from the fire sure to come. How are we doing? How's everybody doing? Let me do 2 or 3 more here. We'll drink some more. Here's another one that's more or less the same theme. Oh, California, imagined isle of Spanish romance. Most of you probably know this, but California came from a 16th century Spanish romance, an early novel, The Adventures of, does anybody know it? That's,
Gilligan's Island?
Can't
Not
think of-
Gilligan's Island.
No. It was a Spanish name.
Califia?
Califia.
Califia.
I don't think that, anyway, it doesn't matter. But in this novel, California was an island ruled by black Amazon. Black women ruled California. So
And
this is
Calafia was the goddess, I
Yeah.
think,
uh,
right?
possibly, but I need to go back and reread that. Oh, California, Imagined isle of Spanish romance, where black Amazons rule. Flame sleeps in your redwood heart, awaiting an awakening spark from a hammered spike, down power line. Ranchers' faulty electrified fence, gas guzzlers undercarriage brushing bunchgrass, transmuting paradise into inferno. Higher winter lows and summer highs sprout calamity. No fireworks for the 4th. Exploding oak and pine launch pyrotechnics now. Stakeholders quake at glowing skies. Soak, shake roofs with garden hoses. Praying water won't give out. Winds will die, fire lines hold. That the sovereign sun will grant a stay of execution. This is called Gone Train Blues. It's nostalgia for the railroads. Listening to Sam McGee's Flying Fingers, flat-picking railroad blues, my phantom tears fall for all the railroads sidetracked long ago. Faded names on empty boxcars, shunted onto rusted spurs. Chesapeake and Ohio, Erie, Lackawanna, Illinois Central cannonballing into legend. Once bustling stations retooled to postcard museums, where shadows endlessly pass, calling all aboard, echoing a slide guitar strum, picking up steam, hauling broken hearts down the line to nowhere, each passenger's last dime dropping through the holes in their pockets as they lug suitcases full of enough ache to make anyone sing the blues. So if your lover soaring away on a silver bird into the blue knocks you to your knees, drags you crawling to the crossroads to bargain for your soul, no demon talent will possess you, fret your fraying heartstrings, or moan your low-down pain for the masses' adulation. For the devil packed his dignity and left you, baby, with no tracks to roll on down. Jerry Seinfeld said that poetry was stand-up without a punchline. Jerry, my poems all had punchlines. Albert Einstein had big problems with quantum mechanics, quantum physics, because of its randomness, and he famously said, God does not play dice. However, to the best of our knowledge, she does. Is God playing dice with the universe? Is everything ivories, rattling bones? Is providence random, blind, and perverse? Whether your lot is benign or adverse depends a lot upon lots of unknowns. Is God playing dice with the universe? Are we doomed to be faders, eternally cursed, with dice never passed but unceasingly thrown? Is providence random, blind, and perverse? Is fortune our fate? Which fate would be worse? That undetermined or one cast in stone? Is God playing dice with the universe? Coming to pass, does all end in a hearse, no matter which pattern of pips is sown? Is providence random, blind, and perverse? In snake eyes or boxcars atoms disperse, but is the pointless hazard alone? Is God playing dice with the universe? Is providence random, blind, and perverse?
Question?
Yes.
Is that a form, a stylized form?
Yes, that's a form called a villanelle. It's probably the best known example of it is Dylan Thomas's Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. That's a villanelle. How about one more?
Yes.
One more for everybody?
Michael, could you do the poem about your mother?
Yes, if I can read that tiny print up here. Sure.
You don't have to.
Wow, that's it.
Yeah, well, a few
I
people
take
here have some
I take requests, yeah, you know.
Yeah. We have reading glasses here.
Yeah.
Well, no, I have bifocal contacts, so what it is, as they say. This is called My Mother's Fire. Expelled from school by the nuns for a spark of temper struck from her flinty independence from life in a steel town, she nurtured a longing for glamour, singing torch songs while doing housework. After a lifelong homage to the romance of cancer sticks, smothering one night in cigarette smoke, delusional from oxygen starvation in her upper story flat, my mother wailed to a neighbor, "I'm trapped, there's fire above and below." Survivor of many blows, my father's, his heart attack the last, she worked all her life with little to show except scorn and the sense the orchestra's off and something seeping under the door. Depression, thrift, branded on her Irish Catholic soul, led her to abandon resurrection, consigning her body to crematorium flames. Her rebellious element, we scattered her ashes in a memorial garden, patch of sunlit grass over Earth's burning heart.
Thank you.
And I'll wind up with this poem. This poem arose out of some thoughts I had on a drive down south a while back. Highway 5 is very conducive to meditation. I mentioned Zeno's paradox. Zeno was an ancient Greek philosopher who said that motion is illusion because obviously you can, if you shoot an arrow, it covers a distance, and then it has to cover half that distance first, and then it has to cover half that distance before that, so that any step can be broken down into infinity, was basically the argument. It sounds good, but it's been mathematically. Distance. Hurling through the night, down the interstate alone, cocooned in satellite music, singing along with their proclaimers that I would walk 500 miles while my engine mills the distance between me and the city of angels. Motion is illusion, says Zeno's paradox, since a step contains infinity. But we shrug, grab a toothbrush and take off, driving by night to beat traffic, leaving hair splitting to philosophers, knowing from news bulletins that bullets reach their mark. In truth, it's quiescence that's chimera, warp speed reality. Far-flung galaxies, immobile, viewed through immensity's lens, ceaselessly scatter like haloed starling murmurations as the universe balloons, pulling new space out of nothing, like an elephant from a hat. So close, so remote. Do you feel the steering wheel tug toward the next nowhere exit, leading you down a desolate road, ending in an open field? Will you follow your urge to stand in the dark on parched grass, arch your neck to ask the stars your place in this world? How far you have to go. Thank you so much.